Hello and welcome. I'm Ivy, the occultist, and I am joined today with a special guest, Amanda, and I'm going to be introducing her momentarily. But today we're going to be talking about magic and mental health. So we're going to be talking about how magic is good for your mental health, how it can be detrimental to your mental health. We're going to talk about neurodivergence and trauma. We're going to talk about so many different things. But before we get into all that, I want to introduce Amanda. And would you like to tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Yes, thank you so much, Ivy. I am a respiration kinesiologist. So I work a lot with the breath and with movement. I am a holistic lifestyle coach, and I integrate a lot of somatic therapies, embodiment therapies, aligned with a lot of the cognitive processing and all the mental wellness things. I specialize with humans that are experiencing chronic pain and fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue, adrenal fatigue, as well as anxiety, depression, OCD, ADHD, all of these diagnoses that are really just patterns that are embedded within our psyche, and then they imprint upon our body, and then we are experiencing that internal ecosystem. But of knowing that there are so many tools and practices that we can integrate into our life so that we can experience ease and wonder and goodness within our internal ecosystem in reciprocity with our external ecosystem.
I love it. I love everything you just said. Oh, this is going to be such a good conversation. And you're very, very educated. I mean, you like started as a personal trainer, right? And then you went to yoga and you did yoga. Wait, no, you did life coaching for a while, then yoga.
Yeah, so it's kind of all of it. So I went to university to be the respiration kinesiologist, so have university education, and then did the personal training, and then continued personal training, and then layered on the holistic lifestyle coaching, and then did the yoga asana within pranayama, and then Ayurveda and traditional Chinese medicine, and then got really into all of the trauma and psychology and holistic psychology, and just so wellness in general is kind of my specialty of how to be well.
Yes. And I've known you for a really, really long time. So I know that you are just a beautiful soul inside and out. Like you are just literally the embodiment of sunshine. Every time I'm with you, I'm like, oh, she's the lightness. Anyways, I don't know. I feel like I always joke that you're like the lightness and I'm the darkness, but it works very, very well together. So it is perfect. So before we get going, I just want to let everybody know that I have pages and pages of notes today. So we're going to be talking about a lot of stuff, but I want to get some disclaimers out of the way. So before we begin, I'm literally going to read this out loud. This conversation is meant to be therapeutic, but it is not a substitute for actual therapy. Please seek out help from a licensed psychologist or a psychiatrist if you have questions or concerns regarding your mental health. This conversation is not meant to be any sort of medical advice. Rather, we hope to open up this discussion for anyone struggling with their mental health within the magical community and to offer insight or ideas on how to improve an individual's mental health. So now that we've got the disclaimers out of the way, we can begin. So I want to start us by talking about how magic can be beneficial to mental health. So I wanted to start, if you have like a personal testimony, I know I have one as well, but is there anything that you would like to share on a personal level, how you feel like it's benefited you in your life?
Yes. I think the most pivotal moment for me was really realizing that magic is all around us and it is within us. And really discerning where you are on that journey, if you need more kind of external feedback to help stabilize that internal world, or if we can cultivate from within to then co-create with the external world, right? Of being able to kind of cue in and connect within where you are on your journey of what you need. Do we need more external feedback or more internal feedback? And for me, experiencing quite a bit of dissociation in my life, that my internal world was pretty happy that I kind of lived in this bubble of sunshine, but there was a lot of like dissonance with external reality, and really cultivating that intuitive discernment of like getting into my human, like into my body, like getting my soul into my physical structure was really pivotal in being able to have that intuitive discernment of what do I need now? Like what practices do I need to call into my life or create that are going to enable me to live in that magic. And so magic was a big part of that, of being able to call that in and connect within
I love that. I love that so much. And so before I kind of go into my own little testimony here, would you identify as a witch just so everybody knows, like, do you practice, do you cast spells? Like, what is your
Mm.
magical experience, I guess? Like, where do you incorporate that?
Yes, I'm a witch.
Okay.
I think one of the biggest things that thinking about in context of history, of like human history, of this really is a time where witches are rising again. And for me, being a witch is having a knowledge and understanding and capacity to listen to the world around us, to understand, herbal allies, and understand that the plants are here to help us, that there's so much nourishment in our environment. So I work a lot with plants and with herbs, and um, love making different teas, and eating lots of dandelions in the field. And um, even simple practices, like when you're drinking your water, whether you are stirring clockwise or counterclockwise of what you're trying to call into your life, or banish from your life, that there's lots of little simple practices that like would be identified as like a witch practice, or attuning to that magic.
Yes, I love it. Witches are back. I'm so excited for us. Anyways, yes to everything you said. Yes to the little things. I think a lot of people, I don't know, there's still a bad stigma around the term witch, or even just a magical practitioner, because obviously I don't identify necessarily as a witch because I practice chaos magic, I practice Kabbalah, I do a lot of things. So I just call myself an occultist. And there's always this negative connotation towards witch or towards occultist. And it's like something to be feared, but really most of us are just like tree hugging hippies, so I mean, it's not as scary as it sounds. But yeah, I mean, as far as my own testimony with magic being beneficial for mental health, I struggled from depression pretty much my entire life. I think that I know it was going back to like preteen years was probably the first time that I was suicidal. And I'm very open about my mental health issues now. And I struggled for years with depression and just waking up and not wanting to live. And it was a struggle. And I can't believe I'm actually sharing this on YouTube now, but here we are. So I've been practicing since I was like 14, 15 years old is when I cast my first spell. And I never thought to use magic for my depression up until recently. I mean, I had gone to therapists, which, by the way, I am always a proponent of going to talk therapy or some other, see a psychiatrist, et cetera. But for me, I had gone for years and got up to the point where I understood why I was the way I was, but I couldn't move past that. I was still depressed every single day. And I was frustrated because it ultimately came down to brain wiring. I was like, okay, I understand why I am this way. Why can't I move past this? And I mean, I tried life coaching. I even tried getting really heavy into nutrition and, balancing my gut health and all that to see if it would help my brain chemistry. I went deep down the rabbit hole with my depression and tried literally every single treatment that one could possibly try. Nothing worked until it was the end of 2020, like in the midst of the pandemic, actually, which was kind of funny. It was like December 2020. I was like, wait a minute, I'm a witch. Why have I not used magic for my depression yet? Like, why, after all these years, have I not actually just tried spells and rituals to better my depression, And so I made a regiment and I decided to do heavy spell casting rituals every single month. And after the fourth month, my depression was gone, like completely gone. I didn't wake up wanting to die anymore. I woke up actually having joy. And I was like, this is fucking incredible, because how is it that I've tried every other treatment method available and it took magic of spells and rituals? And I mean, I've talked in some of my videos before that it's not just the placebo effect. I am a psych major and I'm very knowledgeable on the placebo effect. That was something that I was already implementing into my life, but it took magic and that extra step for it to actually cure my depression. And now I can say it's been like a year and a half or something, and it hasn't come back. Like, that's incredible. I've never been, not depressed for this long of a period of time. So that is my testimony for magic being beneficial for mental health. And I won't share, the rituals that I actually did, because that's a conversation for another day. But I'm very much a yes, do magic, but also do your therapy. You need both, not just one or the other. I think both can work really well together.
I think that's so beautiful, to presence of it doesn't have to be one or the other. Like, you can do both. Like we are complex, beautiful, incredible beings,
Yes.
like that you can travel multiple paths at the same time. And of
Yeah.
integrating like what do I need and what works for me? And especially tuning into that inner discernment, right? That allows us to be like, and even just being open with some curiosity, right? Of trying something new, of being like, okay, I'm open to trying this practice, but I also this feels like a yes for me to integrate. Hmm.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. And I mean, I want to put a disclaimer with my story because I had already done therapy for so many years and I already knew my own mind very, very well. So if somebody, were to do the same spells and rituals, I don't know if they would get the same effect because I had that really strong foundation already built from therapy to work with. So definitely recommend Magic, but also, taking the traditional treatment routes as well and just using it
Hmm.
together. But
Hmm.
yeah, so I wanted to also talk about Magic being beneficial for your mental health in the sense that there is this connection with your inner child and there's like this sense of play that you get, whether you're like grinding herbs or whether you're like going frolicking in a forest and earthing or whatever. So I don't know if that's anything that you wanted to talk about, but play with the inner child for me is huge. That's a huge component.
Hmm. I love that. Inner child work is so important. And especially if you've never heard that term before, it's like inner child, like what?
Yeah.
Like what does that mean? But of understanding that we have so many different like selves within ourselves, that of being able to take the self now and look back into that past self or that inner child that maybe wasn't heard or held or seen or affirmed, and realizing, oh my gosh, I can hear and see and affirm and then love and give what that child needed. And of yes, I get it's important to go down like psychology and everything and kind of get some structure for understanding why, but of really realizing, especially like when we're having the in-body experience of discomfort or dis-ease, right? Whether it's mental or physical or in our bodies, that's happening in the present moment. So it might not necessarily matter as much why, right? A little bit of grounding to know why can be good, but the fact is that it's happening now. How can we care for it now? And of contexting it with the inner child work of understanding, okay, what did I need then? How is it like manifesting in my body now? And how can I so deeply and so radically care for my body and being right now in the present moment? That like radical self-love is one of the most rebellious things you can do, because we
Yes.
live in a very patriarchal capitalist world, right? That wants us to not love ourselves, right? They profit off of not loving ourselves and of being able to embody that joy and curiosity and wonder of that child, whether it's going out in the forest and which is earthing and getting those negative ions. It's so nourishing on like a neurochemical and body level, but also just for your spirit of being out there, of that expansion and that freedom. That yeah, inner child work can be so potent and so powerful.
Oh my God, yes. Yes to all of that. And you just reminded me too of another reason why I really am a proponent of Magic for mental health is because it gives you this sense of power over your life too. It gives you this sense of autonomy where you can literally take back your power. And that's especially helpful for people who have felt like in their lives they haven't had power, or there was somebody always, over the top of them, and they weren't able to make their own decisions. So I really love using Magic as a way of just coping with things that we can control and things that we can't control, because it's really frustrating when we're living in a society. Sometimes it doesn't really mesh with our chemical makeup or psychological makeup, etc. We feel a little out of control with our lives. So yeah, bringing back that power and just having some sort of control is a really validating feeling.
Incredibly validating and so important to feel that so many people don't feel that autonomy, that they're living in reaction, right? If we think action reaction, they're living in reaction to the universe, right? And the world and to others, right? Where it's
Yes.
like, okay, how do we step into I am being the action and that I'm receiving the reaction or the response from the world? And I think that like Magic and being able to really embody and pull in those practices allows us to just again have those daily practices that build that autonomy and that capacity within us to have that sovereign mental state where we're really able to anchor into that internal knowing of, okay, what do I need now? I think that's such a big thing of like full permission to enjoy your life.
Oh my God, yes.
Enjoy
Yes.
your life, enjoy it, like enjoy every little breath. That's why I love like all breathwork practices, because it helps me really tune into like the expansiveness of joy that comes from experiencing like one breath, where it's just like,
Mhm.
wow.
Yes. Yes, I love that. So clearly, you and I both love magic. It's a sense of wonderment, and I would love to know in the comments if anybody feels called to share personal stories of how magic has helped you, or things that you love about your magical practice that bring you joy or a sense of whatever it is you're looking for. Definitely let us know. That's something that I really love talking about. But I also don't want to pretend like there isn't a dark side. Dark side. I hate using that term, but there is sometimes magic can be detrimental to the mental health. So I want to talk about that a little bit more, about all the ways that magic can be detrimental and things that we should maybe do to avoid that, because I want to give a balanced perspective of both things. I don't want to just sit here and be like, oh, magic's great, everybody should do it, because there is a balance in everything in this universe. So one of the biggest things with magic for me personally is doing it too much. Doing anything in excess is obviously going to be detrimental in some regard. You always want to have balance in your life. There was a point in my life where I got really obsessive with my magic, and especially obsessive with lucid dreaming in particular. And I was lucid dreaming a lot. I was really interrupting my sleep cycle. I was starting to dissociate during the day because my sleep cycle was all messed up. And I was lucid dreaming to the point where when I was awake, I wasn't sure what was real and what was not, which got very scary because I felt like I was kind of living in a constant dream-like state. So I would say that there is balance that's needed with magic. I mean, with anything in life, right? It's not just magic, but I think disassociation from reality can be a big thing when it comes to a magical practice, especially when you get to the point where you're starting to see results with your magic and you're starting to get obsessed because you're like, this is amazing. I just cast my first spell and it actually worked. Like, how do people not know about this? And then you deep dive and then, whoa, hold up. We got to go back to basics and we got to like stay calibrated and balanced and all that stuff. So that's kind of my perspective on it, is that balance is needed at all times. So Amanda, how do you feel about that? How do you feel like magic can be detrimental to mental health?
I really liked how you said it, that anything in excess can be detrimental. That always coming back to that balance. Meditation is something that is so nourishing and potent and powerful and such a beautiful practice. I think especially in the neurodivergent brain community, it's helpful to look at, okay, where am I in my brain waves, right? That there's different brain waves for different kind of states, all right? Your brain waves when you're awake are different than your brain waves when you're asleep. And like looking at the ADHD brain, like they're in a lot of theta. So they're very like creative and imaginative and very like flowy musicians, right? But of looking at that, if we are stuck in that theta brain, it's really hard for us to speed up our brain waves and do like just daily tasks of, okay, I need to brush my teeth, I need to do laundry, I need to make the food, I need to pay these bills, I just living in a house, doing things, that it can be challenging to shift out of that brain wave into doing those tasks. And for me, of being in a lot of theta, I like to live in that theta world, that is a slower brainwave. That when I do a lot of meditation, so traditional meditation of seated, long, straight spine, eyes are closed, and you're just focusing, on the breath and connecting with energy, that really, really slows down your brain waves even more. And for me, when I do too much of that meditation, it really pushes me into depression and mental states that are so sluggish and just like, ugh, like, so of knowing where you're at and being like, okay, I bias towards the theta brain waves. So my practice of meditation or mindfulness or wellness are going to be things that might be a little bit more stimulating. They can still be nourishing to the nervous system and connecting to energy, that they can still have all the same benefits,
Mm.
but it might look a little bit different. So, like the medicine for you might be poison to me.
Yes.
Right? And so, of being able to have that discernment of someone that has like really, really quick brain waves that like, anxiety, right? Meditation for them is going to be so, or can be so grounding, because it helps them slow down and kind of anchor in and integrate those frequencies that are slower. And
Yes.
so of being able to, because the main thing that we're looking for is adaptability, and that you're able to access all of the brain waves depending on demand. It really is a matching of the external internal worlds of the demand. So if the external world is demanding a higher brainwave frequency of like, I need to pay these bills and do this laundry, do all those things, of okay, I need to get my brainwaves into that state. So whether it's okay, I'm going to do a certain breathwork practice, or I'm going to do like tapping, or I'm going to do different energizing exercises to help me get into that neurological state, so that I can practice that or get that task done with feeling ease, because my brainwaves match the task demand,
Mhm.
right? Of just knowing how to practice and integrate that.
Yes, I love that you brought that up, because when we talk about neurodivergent minds versus neurotypical minds, it's really interesting in the magical community, because when you're casting a spell or you're performing some sort of magic, you typically want to access altered states of consciousness. You want to access those slower brainwave states, especially if you're wanting to develop psychic abilities, etc. Anything that deals with the spiritual realm, you need to be in those slower brainwaves. And so for somebody, like you, who has, the ADHD and that brain that's constantly in the slower brainwave state, that might be, like you said, detrimental. It might make you feel a little bit more depressed if you're spending more time in those slower brainwave states. So for you in particular, I would, or somebody that does have ADHD or something similar to that, it might be more beneficial to have a magical practice that it focuses on like earthly grounding practices, or being out in nature, some green witchery, some cottage witchery, things like that are really like, yeah, your plants behind you, very physically stimulating. So it gets you like in the moment and in the right brainwave state. Whereas for me, I enjoy a lot of trance work. That's what works best for me. And so it's interesting how you definitely have to tailor your magical practice to your own brain chemistry and play around with what feels good. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Yes, that when we were thinking about neurodivergence and all of these different, labels, that it can be helpful to receive a diagnosis, but also knowing that like your inner reality and that inner knowing of what you need, like is a built practice, and of embodying that
Yes.
curiosity of, okay, I'm going to try this, be like, oh, that like really got me, into depression, and then not feeling, shame or guilt for that then embodied experience of just being like, oh, okay, when I was meditating a ton in seated meditation, just like going in, because that's like so easy for me. Like I can meditate for 3 hours, like feels great. Like
Love
I'm just gonna be in joy for like 3 hours. Nice.
Nice.
But I'm knowing that I do that too much, that it is gonna shift my internal reality to like slower and stagnation, or then it ends up being, poisonous versus medicine.
Yes, I love that. So I think that a consensus then is just balance and finding the right magical practice for you, because there's like a million different ways to practice magic, and you kind of have to figure out you have to do the introspection to figure out your own mind and what works best. So definitely everything in balance. Let's talk about neurodivergence a little bit more, and trauma. And I wanted to get your opinion on this. So there's two different conversation topics that I kind of wanted to get your opinion on and just discuss a little bit more, because there seems to be, I know within the witchcraft community specifically, but also in a lot of magical traditions, there seems to be a lot of neurodivergent minds, whether it comes from trauma and you have, PTSD that has changed your brain structure, or BPD or depression, or if you have ADHD or autism, et cetera. Why do you think there are so many neurodivergent minds in the magical community, if you have an opinion about that?
Mm-hmm. This is something that I, over the years, have been witnessing and observing, and of really trying to observe it from an objective state, right? Because our brains are so good at finding patterns, right? That we want to see the patterns and all the things because we can connect all the things. They're like, ooh, pattern, which is like great for our brains. But of really trying to be like, okay, is this really a thing? And so of going into lots of different communities that, whether it's an intentional community or a magical community, and all of these spaces, whether it's a music festival or whatever it is, right? That of really trying to observe and understand the people that I meet, but of seeing that pattern of so many people that are drawn to those spaces, and that those avenues of connecting are neurodivergent. And I think that that is so beautiful because it, like, we experience the world differently than a neurotypical. And both are valid, both are needed, both are true and wonderful. But of seeing that pattern of neurodivergence within these communities, I think that it opens us up to the possibility of more, that it allows us to engage in different practices and have that curiosity, because our world, especially in America, is very set up for the neurotypical, right? That whether it's the school system or different infrastructures in business or whatever it is, it's very linear and very structured for the neurotypical to thrive, and neurodivergence often don't thrive in those environments. So they end up shifting into environments where they feel accepted, they feel seen, they feel reflected. Having that neurodivergent brain, like, it really is an opportunity to experience so much magic and wonder.
I totally agree. I think that there's nothing wrong with being neurotypical. There's nothing wrong with being neurodivergent. It's just different environments are required for that person to thrive. And I agree with you. I think our world is built for neurotypicals because that's the majority of our population. That's what logistically makes sense. And I think that neurodivergent minds are a little bit more open typically to non-ordinary reality versus ordinary reality. So whether that's hearing and talking to spirits and thinking like you're going crazy, or whether that's, and by the way, if you are hearing voices, that is a whole nother conversation. Please speak to somebody if you feel like you're concerned with your mental health. But that's, I think that we're a lot more open, and you and I are neurodivergent, but in very different ways. We have our own, things going on. But it is interesting that everybody I talk to seems to have some sort of something that makes them neurodivergent, or some sort of deep trauma that they went through, et cetera. And that was kind of like a follow-up question I had, is that there are a lot of people that there's this question of wondering, is every witch traumatized? Like, have we literally all been traumatized? Because it seems like every witch you talk to has an extremely traumatic story. And why is that? Why do all of us seemingly have gone through some sort of trauma? And I know it's not all of us. There's actually some witches that I know had very happy childhoods and are just very peaceful, lovely human beings. But it seems like there is a large population of witches in particular that have been through trauma. And I have my own opinions about why that is, but I'm just curious if you had any opinions about that as well.
Yeah, I think looking at in context of generational trauma, right? That it doesn't even necessarily have to be your own, but it might be yours to heal and to yours to release and integrate. And so, yeah, again, going back to, it's less about, getting into the details of why. Like, the fact is that you're feeling, that inner dissonance. Like, how are we going to integrate it? How are we going to heal it in the perspective of bringing it into self, of accepting it and loving it? And so whether it's your childhood, whether it's your mom's childhood, right, of when you look at from this, right, so I've been working on for like the last couple years, well, probably since like high school, of loving the experience of being in a female body, of holding a womb. And recently I saw a picture that was of like a lineage of women, right? That we go from womb to womb to womb to womb to womb. And then you have like sperm donors here and there, right? But of the lineage of women, but of that passed down within our nervous systems, right? That it's encoded within our literal physical structure, the the patterns of abuse, of mistreatment, of a lot of pain,
Yes.
and of knowing that it's literally like in your system. And so, but of being able to look at that of like, wow, I'm aware of the fact that like lineage generational trauma is a thing, but that we can create a body that releases all of that, and that we
Yes.
no longer have to pass that on, whether it's from, physically giving birth or the other creations that we bring into the world will no longer be infused or imprinted with that neurological tone of trauma.
Mm.
Seeing that pattern of witches having trauma makes sense because of history, right? Of how much we were very systematically and structurally shamed and killed and pushed down. And that's one thing that of growing up Christian, the word paganism in my brain immediately was like, oh, devil worshiper.
Yup. Uh-huh.
But then when you actually learn history, you're like, oh, they were killing all of these women that knew about plants, that walked alone in the forest, that were nice to animals. And you're
Devil
that
worshiper.
knew the cycles of the moon, that were farmers that had to live within the cycles of nature because they were farmers.
Yes.
And you're like, whoa, this is like very intentionally done to like shame and push down this wisdom of nature. And so many things are disconnected from nature. Like so many people in their daily life, they literally don't even go outside at all.
Yes. Oh my gosh, that's so sad to me because I was also one of those people like in the depths of my depression, I didn't go outside. I was lucky if I cooked a can of soup for myself to eat. Like it's a cyclical thing for sure. But I think that like there's also the fact of people who experience trauma are typically seeking out things that are different from their ordinary
Mhm.
reality. And so I think there is a component as well of people just seeking out witchcraft or some sort of alternative lifestyle to gain some power back in order to, better their situation or better their life. And witchcraft or magical practices in general, they are esoteric in nature. Not very many people know about them. They are still hidden a little bit. Now it's gotten way more popular than it was beforehand, but it still is a little bit hidden. You have to work for it. You have to search for it. And so I think the people in these communities do typically have a little bit more trauma because they were the ones that sought it out in the first place. There's not very many people that are born into witchcraft. I mean, there's some people that are, but for the majority of us, we come in later on in life as a choice. It's not by, us being born as witches. So I think that's also why it seems like so many of us have trauma. Is because
Mhm.
we've flocked from everywhere to get to this point where we have answers and have some sort of autonomy in our lives. So yeah, everything that you said plus that, yes. So okay, we've talked about neurodivergence a little bit. We've talked about trauma. I also kind of wanted to touch on, there was one more thing that I wanted to talk about in this topic, and that was this is a really, really difficult thing to talk about because it's essentially the idea of you're not crazy. Because when you are maybe experiencing psychic abilities or you're getting into magic or you're dealing with spirits, you're dealing with the unknown, there is this doubt in your mind that kind of tells you, am I crazy? Am I hearing voices? Like, is this good? Is this bad? And so with that in mind, this is a controversial topic because there is a certain point where you do need to seek out a licensed healthcare professional. Absolutely. And if you're concerned for your safety, please do that. But also, reality is a construct of our society. Who's to say what's real and what's not real? I mean, within reason, of course, but it's frustrating to me when people are immediately dismissed, when their psychic abilities are dismissed and they're like, oh, you're crazy, you're not valid, you're not whatever. And I wish that our society was a little bit more open-minded with that. I wish that people were accepted and that their reality was just as valid as a neurotypical person's reality who does not experience those things. So is there anything that you wanted to add to the conversation on that?
Definitely. Looking at if you were born in a different land and you had these experiences, like they would be cultivated and cared for and celebrated and nourished versus like pushed away and shamed. And that's so much of that like internalized gaslighting, that we don't believe ourselves, that we don't trust ourselves, that there's this embedded separation
Yes.
between, you know, mind and body, and but that it leads to that questioning your own reality, or that internalized gaslighting of being, yeah, that you're meant to feel crazy, that your reality that you experienced of like, oh, that's not true, like, oh, you're like crazy.
Yeah.
And of being able to understand that that wiring in your brain is there and realizing that, oh, it's just a pattern, right? I can change that. Like, that's why it's so exciting with all of, you know, these practices that help us to rewire our brain, of being like, I can change the internal, I can literally change how I think and process things.
Yes.
And I can change my reactions to things. Yeah, I think that I really, really do believe that there are so many more spaces that are being created in developed countries for caring for and nourishing and cultivating these extrasensory, you know, highly sensitive humans that are attuned to different realities and ways of being and showing up, that it's celebrated and nourished. And yeah, and again, going back to that like inner discernment of being like, what do I need right now? Like, do I need, you know, real medical help? Because sometimes that is the option that we need to stabilize us, and so that we can have some centering and start to, because lifestyle changes are really big, right? Of how, what support do we need, right? What do we need to integrate and change in our life? Of it can be challenging just because there is such a saturation of so much information, where you're just like, there's a million choices, like what do I even choose? So being able to tune into that inner knowing and being like, okay, I'm just going to get a plant. I'm going to get one plant and I'm going to care for it. Like, that's going to be my grounding moment of like, I'm going to water it. I'm going to say nice things to it. I'm going to put a picture of me as a child on it, you know, just like, I'm like, what little thing can you do that's going to start building that internal reality of feeling safe and feeling seen and feeling affirmed in that this reality is real. Do I want to choose this? Do I want to keep experiencing this reality, or do I want to reprogram it and experience a different reality?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I think this was one of the things where like I recently did a video on developing psychic abilities, and the doubt was one thing that I did talk about, because you kind of have to choose your reality at that point. Do I want to investigate this a little bit further? And do I want to maybe trust myself and see what happens within reason, of course, and being safe? But, or do I want to completely shut it off because this is too much for me to deal with? And I want to be more present in the mundane world. I don't want to be hearing these voices. I don't want to sense these feelings. I don't want to whatever. So, I think most people have that. There are some people though that just don't have a choice, period, and they just experience it and they can't shut it off. So that's obviously the exception to the rule. But yeah, I agree with everything you said for sure. So I would love to bridge into magical self-care and talk a little bit. We've kind of been talking about self-care this entire video of like things that you can do. But when talking about using magic as a self-care system, I personally like using the chakra system. That is something that I am very much like a big proponent of. I love working with chakras. I love, there's like this assessment that you can do on yourself to see whether one is excessive, whether it's deficient, or whether it's well balanced. And I actually like grabbed a book for anybody watching this, because this is my favorite chakra book ever. I don't know, Amanda, have you read this? You haven't?
Beautiful.
Oh, I'm gonna buy this book for you and send it to you. It's like the best. I have read so many chakra books, and it's like this one's the best one, and it's written by a psychologist. And so she kind of talks about the Eastern traditions marrying with the Western traditions. And so I'm always like, everybody get this book because it's amazing. It's Eastern Body, Western Mind by Anodea Judith. But she has a self-assessment in there. where you can figure out how your chakras are. And then she also tells you tangible, practical things that you can do to help rebalance your chakras, whether they are efficient or deficient, excessive, et cetera, et cetera. But that is one thing that I find really, really helpful, especially when I'm doing lots of magic. And I find that my upper chakras are being excessive and pushing too much energy out. And my lower chakras are deficient because I'm not being present in the practical world. I'm not exercising, I'm not eating good nutrition. I'm, focusing on magic too much. So there really is that balancing act. But I wanted to ask you what your opinions were for magical self-care and how you kind of incorporate that.
Chakras, yes, using that internal system for guidance can be so helpful when we are looking for grounding, when we're looking for feeling freedom and feeling open. Something that can be nourishing for us is the food that we are eating. And when we think about our chakras, a really cool and fascinating thing is that nature is always guiding us and always supporting us. So when we look at the color of foods, they're actually nourishing the chakra that is that color. So like red, our root chakra, like if you're needing to feel grounded, like eat root vegetables, so beets or sweet potatoes, right, that are red, or orange for, right, the sacral chakra. That just connecting that, it's such a simple connection, but then it's just like, oh, if I'm wanting to open up my heart or open up my throat, right, I'm going to do lots of like leafy greens and I'm going to eat blueberries, right, that we can connect the color of the chakras to the actual energy and frequency of that color that actually nourish the glands and body parts that are connected to those chakras.
Yes.
I will give a reference. Deanna Minich, she's one of my like favorites for chakras and nutrition. She speaks a lot about rainbow nutrition. So that's again an easy visual thing. When you look down at your plate, how many colors do you see? Right, that we want to have variety, that nature thrives within diversity and variety. So does human being. And she has so many wonderful, beautiful resources for helping transition and shift into more of a rainbow nutrition.
Yeah.
But it's specifically aligned with the chakras and different lifestyle things and foods and that kind of physiological activities and autonomy of all of it. So I'm going to refer to her to go get that information. Shifting into thinking about lifestyle practices or holistic lifestyle practices, one of my priorities is looking at accessibility of so many things that are going to be nourishing and grounding and uplifting and integrating for our body and being are free. That we don't have to buy all of these things, especially like when you're in, I'm a little bit in the biohacking world. So much of it is like gadgets and things, and like technologies are so cool and can be so helpful, right? Even thinking like the red light that I have right now, it does infrared light and then just regular light. That I use the infrared in the morning and just the red light in the evening to help with my circadian rhythm. But you can also just go outside in the morning to get that daylight to signal through the eyes to then start producing the neurochemicals that we need to be awake during the day, and that will then start the pattern of that circadian rhythm or that sleep-wake cycle, so that your sleepy time hormones are going to release on time for you to feel sleepy and to go to bed. So let's jump into that. Speaking about lifestyle practices that are essentially free. So one of the biggest ones would be sun gazing, or getting that light in the morning, that if it's brighter out, so especially here in Washington, we sometimes see the sun, but for lots of the year, it's not super sunny in the morning. So thinking of just daylight, of being like, okay, is it lighter outside than it was at 2 a.m.? Yes, okay, I'm still going to receive all of the nourishing wavelengths that are going to help my internal system. So getting that morning light, and then thinking about earthing and grounding with that. So earthing or grounding, lots of times it's taught with like putting your feet on the earth. But if you live in a place that's cold, like that can like not sound great. And so you still have to work with your psychology. So you can use your hands, right? Touch a tree. So be out in daylight in the morning or morning light, and then touch a tree for 2 minutes.
Yes.
It doesn't have to be that much time. That it's the frequency of the earth helps to give those negative ions that are anti-inflammatory, that help literally ground your human and your physical structure. Being like, oh yeah, I'm in a human body on earth. Hello, earth.
Yes.
Hello, sky. Like, thank you for, helping my internal rhythms stay synced, right? That our external reality gives our internal reality cues of how to manage. And we perceive all that through our senses. And so another thing that we can do is looking at cold plunging or cold showers. That is going to be super, super, super beneficial for anti-inflammatory properties. So when we look at inflammation in our system, like 85% of diseases are inflammation based or lifestyle driven. I'm going to say that again. Like 80 to 85% are lifestyle.
It's
so
sad.
the choices it's empowering, right?
Yeah.
The choices you make in your day determine whether you create disease in your body. Wow, that's amazing. How can I choose to not create disease in my body? Right? So cool. But I'm looking at our fascial health, and especially our exclusion zone water. I'm gonna get a little nerdy here, but I promise it's gonna make sense and correlate back to cold showers. So exclusion zone water is our fourth phase of water, which is recently discovered, because typically there's 3 phases of water, but we've discovered a 4th phase. And so the 4th phase of water is within a biological system when sunlight connects with that water. So the water within our extracellular matrix ends up being structured, right? So it's like the water is just like flowing around. And when sunlight or infrared light or heat connects with that water, it structures it into a crystalline structure, which is just super fun and witchy because you're like, I'm made of crystals.
Yes, I love that.
But it makes a crystalline structure, which then super nourishes your fascia or the connective tissue, the communication pathways throughout all of your systems that connect all the chakras and all the energies, so that you're able to have faster communication, so that when you connect with the earth, those nourishing negative ions and stuff can flow so much faster. And so a lot of this has to do with mitochondrial health. And so when we think about producing that exclusion zone water or getting that water into the extracellular matrix so that when it's connected with the sun, it can be crystalline and make us feel amazing, we need our mitochondria, or the kind of powerhouse of the cell. So each cell has a mitochondria. And when that mitochondria is inflamed, all the organelles within the cell are also inflamed. And so there's something in there called the electron transport chain, because we know at the end of the electron transport chain, it produces energy, heat, and that exclusion zone water that goes into the extracellular matrix. And we want that water to be produced. But when the cell is inflamed, the ions that are jumping, that need to create those things, they can't jump where they need to go because there's inflammation in the cell. So we need to decrease inflammation so that those ions are able to jump and then create the energy, the heat, and the water. So when we look at cold plunging or cold therapies, that is going to systemically decrease that inflammation, we're able to optimize the production of energy and hydration and that exclusion zone water, which then is going to like super charge our human. So looking at doing that, best practice would be just like finding a lake, but everyone doesn't have access to a lake. So even just your shower, of making it a little bit cold. It doesn't have to be like absolutely freezing. So again, working with your psychology, that like just make it a little bit colder. Take a hot shower first and then be like, oh, like cold doesn't sound too terrible because I'm like really hot right now, right? That's also people will do like hot cold contrast. Like they'll go in the sauna, they'll sit in the sauna until like a cold shower sounds good. Like on a hot day, like jumping in a cool river sounds like nice. Like, oh, it's cooling and nice. Yes. But like all those practices, you still do have to work with your psychology because you're still a human, right? Of that, like if it's excruciating and painful, like most likely you're not going to keep it in your daily rhythm because it's just like hard to make yourself do miserable things.
Totally.
Doing the cold shower is really going to help decrease that inflammation, and decreasing that inflammation again is going to help you prevent so much disease in the body. Does that track?
Yes, I love everything you said. That is so cool. And I love it when people get nerdy. I'm like, that's the best thing ever. When somebody's getting nerdy about something they're passionate about, I'm like, you go off. I love it.
Yay.
Love
Okay,
it.
I have a couple more things.
Yeah. Okay, go. Go for it.
Perfect. Okay, so then after cold showering, thinking about breath work. So our rhythms of our breathing are going to signal our body environment to do different things. So much of how we experience existing in the world is just us experiencing the state of our nervous system, right? Are we activated and all over the place? Are we calm? Are we in flow state? And so knowing that one of the quickest ways to decide what nervous system you're experiencing is through the breath, because breathing happens on its own, but then we can also consciously control the pattern of our breathing. So one of the breathing patterns that I did want to bring in is Nadi Shodhana, so from yogic practices, or alternating nostril breathing, because it's a balancing breath, right? There's different breathing patterns that are very activating. There's different breathing patterns that are very calming, but in lieu of our balance theme, I wanted to bring in this practice. So alternating nostril breathing, essentially you're breathing from one side to the other, this side, and back over. So using your thumb and then your fourth finger. So the thumb blocks the right nostril, and then your fourth finger blocks the left nostril. So you're pressing on the outside of the nose versus like having your finger like in your nose.
Right.
So you're pressing on the outside, right? So you start with the thumb pressing on the right. So you inhale through the left, and then you pause, you're blocking both, and then you exhale on the right, block both, pause, and then you inhale right, pause, exhale left. So you're just going from one side to the other, but it's so nourishing and so balancing, right? That we're able to then kind of slow down and center, and then you're using that breathing pattern and tool to then create an internal ecosystem where you're like, okay, I am fine. I am safe. Like now my conscious mind is online, and, you know, I could go cold plunge, or I could go outside, or I could, you know, do other lifestyle practices that are going to be nourishing for us. Another one I will bring in is oil massage and tapping. So these practices can be really nourishing for our lymphatic system, our just blood flow. And then also turning off your Wi-Fi can be really nourishing for us, of thinking that all of the frequencies that are happening in our world now, right? There's so many more frequencies everywhere in our environment, and of knowing that a lot of those are not compatible with our human biology. And so something you can do in the evening is turning off your Wi-Fi, right? You don't need your Wi-Fi in the evening. And so that you're kind of calming down the house environment too. And then even thinking about like you can do red light on your phone, so that like in the evening time, you're not signaling like the awake hormones, you're signaling like, okay, I need to go to sleep. We can link that down below, the little directions of how to turn your phone screen to red. Another thing that is wonderful and witchy to do is structuring the water that you're drinking. So we have our structured water within our biology that is when sunlight or heat connects with the water and extracellular matrix, but a big thing is drinking structured water. And so there's like all of these big machines that you can buy, or you can just create like a little vortex in the water by like swirling it, or you can use a spoon. And then if you want to add in a certain spell that you're calling in, so if you're going clockwise, you are calling it into your life, and then counterclockwise, it's going out of your life.
Yes.
But that's structuring the water so it's like more bioavailable.
Love that.
And then also looking at remineralizing the water. So if you can have filtered water, that would be great. If you can remineralize it, so putting like some pink salt in it. So think pink salt is like 84 different minerals versus like white bleach table salt, different. That quality matters. We can remineralize it, and then we can structure it. You can also ohm into your water, like oh, right, of knowing that like the frequency and the vibration of your voice really is like changing the molecular structure of the water. And there's lots of research around that. And even just like putting love into the water or love into your food, of like blessing your food, giving gratitude for the farmers that grew the food, right? Of presencing the whole ecosystem of how can I be part of the ecosystem, right? Because that's going to create most ease and most balance. And shopping local too, right? Of trying to keep the food within the ecosystem. So again, tuning into the wisdom of nature, of knowing that food is cyclical, right? That it's a newer thing that we have, at least here in Seattle area, that we have access to food like all year round, like all different kinds of food all year round. And then that's newer. I was speaking with my grandmother, and like she was just like, she can remember a time when they only ate food grown in season. That's not that long ago.
It's
and
not.
so we're really seeing that like that can have a huge impact on the gut as well, of that when we're falling out of rhythm with seasons and with the external environment, that our internal environment is suffering, and that we suffer because then we're experiencing the unpleasant experience of that. So of eating seasonal foods, that rotates and nourishes like your gut microbiome, right? It increases that diversity. Oh, and if you were looking at spending a little bit of money, I would recommend called a Bombilla. It is a tea drinking straw. So a lot of like mindfulness practices, like people get into drinking tea and they buy so many of these packaged tea things. But then if you're like, oh, I really like this practice of tea, eventually you're going to get to loose leaf tea. So how about we just go straight to loose leaf tea? And then you buy one of these straws. And so this straw on the end, it's a filter, right? So I have my loose leaf just in the hot water in here. I don't need to put it in a bag. I don't need to do any of that stuff. I just drink it through the straw, and it filters on the bottom. I know, life-changing tea experience.
So cute. I've never seen that. Oh my gosh. Okay.
I think traditionally they're used for like yerba mate, but we can also link that below because it's just life-changing. Of just being like, herbal tea is beautiful and wonderful and magic and so good, but having one of those straws is so beneficial because then you don't need all the little bags to put all little things and Also a dry brush, so nourishing for our lymphatic system, and especially like someone that easily sinks into more stagnation and depression, having things that are like stimulating and activating, super nourishing for me. So I do that in the morning, that it kind of just, so it's a brush that you just brush your body with, but it helps with that lymphatic system. So like our detox system, and just with blood flow, and that it helps kind of like wake up every little cell being like, good morning, hello, I love you.
Yes, I love it.
And then the last thing being either red light glasses, or you can buy red light bulbs or Edison bulbs, right? Softer light, because so much of our environment now is indoors. And so looking at how can we have an environment that signals, again, our internal environment that feels great, and that our biology is staying within the cycles of nature, and that are reflective of, you know, the sun rising and setting, because that sets our sleep wake cycles. So that those light bulbs don't cost a ton. But if you were looking at spending a little bit of money, I would do the tea straw and then a dry brush and the red light. There's nothing. This is what I love. Like being a holistic lifestyle coach, this is what it is. It's looking at all of the rhythms of your life, of your external environment, of your internal environment, right? Our psychological patterns of like what's embedded, like what do we want to experience, what do we want to change, like how do we want to connect with that awe and wonder, like what do we want to implement in our life, but of really anchoring in that sovereign autonomy and capacity to be like, wow, this is me, this is my life, I'm in a human body. Like how can we fill it with so much magic and wonder and connection and goodness, and that expansive reality that is just feels so good. It feels so good.
I love it. Well, okay, you killed it with magical self-care. Like I was expecting us to talk about making the mundane magical and being turning life into a fantasy and, staying in your whatevers. I didn't expect you to be all like crystallized water. Here's dry brushing.
You are a crystalline being.
Exactly. Oh my gosh. I love that so much. Yes. So you killed it with the self-care. I don't need to say anything else. I was going to say stuff and then you just killed it all. So we'll just leave it at that for now.
How about I enlivened it all? I brought life to it all.
Yes, I love that. You enlivened it, of course. So for anybody watching, we are going to link Amanda's information down below if you're interested in getting connected with her for coaching services, guidance, etc. So I'm going to have her information link below. And then you also have a podcast. We didn't even talk about that at any point. So I will link the podcast down below as well for you all to check out, as well as her website, as well as her Instagram and all the things. But is there anything else that you wanted to say to anybody before we end this recording?
Yes, I would love to invite everyone to a summer solstice wellness festival that we are hosting at the Secret Garden in Stanwood, Washington. It is going to be a beautiful and just magic infused, wonderful celebration of being alive, of connecting to ourselves, of connecting to nature, of connecting to others. The first part of the festival will be more of wellness experiences that you've ever been curious about, like sound baths or sound healing. We're doing a sound bath. There's a tarot card reader. What else? There's movement, meditation. We're going to have a forest fairy path that we can go on and explore. And then there's local vendors and booths. And we have Shambhala Bakery is going to be here. And oh my gosh, most nourishing, wonderful, amazing food. That it's gluten-free. There's vegan options. Also, there's maybe wild caught salmon. So good. And then the day will flow into a cacao ceremony that we're having a practitioner come in for cacao. And so if you don't know about cacao is one of my absolute favorite. Rob and Melissa are local kirtan leaders that you can look them up on Spotify. They're amazing, Rob and Melissa. So kirtan is singing in Sanskrit. So Sanskrit is like vibrational bliss. So it's like the language of yoga. So like you've ever been to a yoga class, like if they're like Trikonasana, so that's Sanskrit, or like Namaste, that's Sanskrit. So it's singing in Sanskrit, and it's such a joyous, embodied. Oh, it's going to be so beautiful. And then flowing into a drum circle, again, guided drum circle. We're going to have different chimes and stuff for everyone to kind of flow into it. And we'll have a fire dancer for that part. And then we're going to end with ecstatic dance. It is on Saturday, June 18th. And we can link that down below for more exploration. But we're really, really excited to open up this space and just welcome everyone. And that it's a day of embodying that curiosity and that exploration of different wellness practices that you might not have heard of. We're going to do some tapping, we're going to do different energy work, we're going to do stuff with the chakras, right, and the sound baths, and having the practitioners there so you could ask questions if you never experienced it and want to know more, and then flowing into kind of all the ceremonies and celebration. And it's the longest day of the year, especially in Seattle, Washington. We get so much sun in daylight for that day of the summer solstice.
Love it. Okay, so we will link that event information down below, as well as your information and your podcast and all the things. And I am excited for that. That sounds amazing. So well, anybody else, if you want to contribute with the conversation, definitely feel free to comment down below all the things that we've discussed. And also, this is an endless pit of stuff to talk about. So we did not cover everything that is in these categories today. So feel free to chime in with your own thoughts and opinions. But thank you so much for being here with us today, watching this video. Thank you, Amanda, for doing this with me. I'm glad we got to connect again. It's been a long time since you and I were able to connect. So I'm glad we were able to do that. And yeah.
Thank you so much. I do want to presence that life is a daily practice and that your path is your own. And I think that to kind of summarize everything that we spoke about, of finding that balance of what is most nourishing for my human right now. How can I so deeply care for and love my body in this current moment? And that'll open up a doorway of being able to find what practices are most nourishing for you now. It might be different tomorrow, or different seasons of your life are going to be different. But of knowing that, like, your practice is your practice. It's for you. It's for you to enjoy being in a body, being in a brain, like feeling energy, connecting with all of it. It's just I love living.
Everything. Yes. Well, thank you again. Thank you everyone for watching this video, and I will see you in a video very soon. Bye.